What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I'm your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror, Volume 7, Day 3, and of course, that means it's a very special one. It's my birthday. Alright, enough of that shit. Let's get into the film. This is a film that originally was done in 2010. It got released in 2014 and finally made its way to Blu-ray here in North America in 2022, courtesy of Severin Films. And it is one I knew nothing about. I saw this being advertised on the website and I was like, shit, that one looks like an older film. To my amazement, it wasn't. Of course, it's a modern film. And it is called All About Evil. And then when I got it, I was looking at the credits on here and I noticed that Cassandra Peterson was starred in this film. She, of course, is Elvira. She plays the mother of one of the main leads in this film. And also Natasha Lyonne, if I'm saying her name correctly. Now, I love her. I've always had a crush on her, and she did a bunch of films in the late 90s. Slums of Beverly Hills, which is like a dark comedy. She was, of course, in American Pie, Detroit Rock City, Because I'm a Cheerleader, or 'Cause I'm a Cheerleader. That was like another dark comedy. And I was trying to think if she had ever been in any horror films, and I had to look it up, and it dawned on me when I saw it. She was in Anti-Birth a few years ago, and I was like one of the only people that ever really liked that movie. So, but yeah, so this is kind of an oddball one. I guess she had done this one before Anti-Birth, which I didn't know about, so she's actually been in a couple different horror films, but it's good to see her getting a starring role in a film like this. But yeah, get into the synopsis of this one right here. Basically, it's about her character. She plays a character named Deborah Tennis, or Deborah Tenney. And what happens is her father owns a cinema, and he passes away, and he leaves it to her. Now, at the time, she's working as a librarian, hates her job, and of course she's like, shit, man, I want to go take over the cinema and kind of resurrect it because it's dying out. It's not making very good business stuff. So she goes to work there, and she's got this crazy evil bitch mother who basically just wants to capitalize on the property values and stuff like that. And she wants her daughter to sign these papers to sell it and stuff like that. And she's like, fuck no, I don't want to do that. One thing leads to another, and the mother ends up not selling it. This event leads into her new endeavor, which is filmmaking. So essentially what the premise of the film is, she basically turns a little bit psychotic and she starts making snuff films inside the cinema and showing them off as they were just, like real films. And of course they become super popular within the community and the city and stuff like that. And she's kind of resurrected her cinema. And that's basically the premise of the film. Now, my thoughts on this one, man, this is a fun-ass movie. It's like a huge love letter to old school, horror film cinephiles and stuff like that. The opening credits in the film right there tell you what this one's going to be all about. The credits are done over like old school, like 50s and 60s and 70s movie posters and stuff. You see some Herschel Gordon Lewis posters and Mario Bava posters and et cetera, et cetera. The film is just filled with that type of stuff. Of course, it's set in a cinema, which of course you see lots of like old school posters and things like that. There's lots for the horror film fan to feast your eyes on throughout the film and stuff like that. Now, I really like the premise. I really like how they set up her getting into making snuff films. I thought it was actually kind of clever because, I think everybody maybe at one time or another's had this moment if you didn't really care for your parents that much or whatever, but you never follow through with it. So it's kind of a cool setup, and which leads into her films. And this movie is kind of a comedy. It's not a goofy comedy. It's got really good gags in it and stuff like that. And one thing they do really well is playing off of like classic horror films or classic movies and stuff like that, and kind of rerouting the titles into like horror themes and stuff. You can kind of see behind me what's going on with some of them, like Gore and Peace and stuff like that, and A Tale of Two Titties. That will make sense if you've seen the movie, and if you haven't, once you have, that'll make complete sense to me because that's actually one of the more memorable scenes in the film. It's absolutely hilarious what she does in this short. So, but yeah, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of great like titles that they kind of mimicked into horror films and stuff like that. I thought the effects were good in this too, man. The effects and the kills, and some of the kills they're quite memorable. There's some really good stuff going on here. which I thought was really cool. And it's kind of cool too because they do all the little shorts that they show in the cinema in black and white. And she creates this character, like I said, her name is Deborah Tennis, and she turns into Deborah Tenny. It's kind of like a play on like Elvira a little bit, and she's like this French hostess, and she's making these short films and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. There's lots of little gags and shoutouts in this one. There's a really great joke in this movie between Cassandra Peterson and her son in the film. And she's kind of confronting him because he's having problems and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I'm kind of in love with an older woman. And she glances up at a poster of Elvira, and I literally fucking died. I was like, that is such a good joke. There's some really good shoutouts too. There's a really good one to Greta's character in Demons. Of course, this one all set in a theater. You have to do something dedicated to Demons because that's like the ultimate horror film set in a cinema, right? Is it not? There's lots of good ones, and this one's right up there. This is a really good one. The location that they shot in, I believe they shot this at a cinema in San Francisco and stuff. It's fantastic. It's like an old school one and stuff, and it fits the bill quite well. But what really drives this one actually is, Natasha Lyonne's character, man. She's fantastic in the movie, man. She kind of plays like dual roles. She plays like, her homely kind of self, and then her created Deborah character, and I really enjoy that too. Yeah, man. Really good throwback to like, old school kind of, I wouldn't say slasher films, but old school films and exploitation and things like that. I think they did a really good job kind of bringing that out, especially with the budget on this one. You can tell it's not an overly huge budget, but it's, what they did with their budget is they went a long way with it. They really, really did. I was surprised at the amount of effects and stuff like that. And just the acting in the film overall too was really good. A lot of good actors and a lot of good parts in this one and stuff like that too. So, actually, Mink Stoll is in this film too from Female Trouble. I thought that was kind of cool. And then Peaches Christ, the famous drag queen, also makes an appearance in this too. But overall, really, really fun film. Love me some movies that are set in cinemas. Love the characters. The kills are fun. The jokes are good. And that was one thing that I was a little bit worried about this movie, was the fact it was going to get a little bit too goofy. I thought it was going to be too goofy for itself. But they did a lot of these gags for horror film fans. They didn't they didn't exploit those things so much. Like if you're a fan of these films like Demons and all these other ones, I'm not going to give everything away, but you're going to get these. They didn't have to like overdo it, those stupid 80s throwback slashes that they make now in these modern times, and they keep reminding you that it's the 1980s over and over and over and over again. Well, they don't do that here. It's not set in the 80s, it's set in modern times. There is a prologue that's kind of set in the 80s and stuff. But it's like 2 minutes, and this one it's set in modern times. But this one doesn't try to remind you of the movies that it's making gigs at and stuff like that. So, which I think is fantastic. But yeah, this one overall, fantastic movie, man. Really enjoyed the shit out of this. Don't want to say too much about it, but the music is fantastic in it. Actually, the cinematography is really good in this film too. There's a lot of really great shots, and it is just like it's a horror film fan's eye candy. It really is, man. And I love these type of movies that are set in these areas because you find yourself eye wandering a lot, especially me, because I love looking at the background and seeing the posters and what movies are playing and things like that. I always get caught up in that shit, man, and it's just it's great. So, All About Evil, I am rambling. Don't want to give too much more about it. I just love the premise of it. It's really fantastic. It's such an entertaining watch. It runs just under 100 minutes. Seems a little bit long, but it doesn't come off as being that long at all. It didn't overstay its welcome at all, which I thought was kind of cool. And there is a little bit of social commentary in the film too, with Cassandra Peterson's son's character. I think his name is Sean in the film. Is it Sean? I can't remember. But anyways, there's a really funny kind of underlying premise with his character that he's very normal. Like you can tell that he's very normal, but his teacher thinks that he's very disturbed and he's a threat to himself and other people because he likes horror films. I like that premise. But that premise also plays into the core narrative of the film, especially when you lead into the third act and stuff like that with the investigation and what's going on. Because, if you're making snuff films in a cinema, there's gotta, people are probably gonna find out about it and shit like that. So there's a lot of really cool things happening in this one. But if I had to rate this one, one, I'm going to come in at a 8.5 out of 10. I think it's very, very solid. It's definitely worth your time. Severin did a really good job with this release. There's tons of features on here. There's also a bonus CD soundtrack, which is really cool because I really enjoyed the music in this. Was awesome. So, but yeah, not much more to say about All About Evil. Do check it out. It's a fantastic movie. I highly recommend it, especially if you love movies that are set in cinema. There's not a whole lot of them, but there is enough. Got me thinking. I was like, is there enough to make a top 10? I think there is, for movies that are completely set in cinemas, not just films that have cinema scenes in them. But anyways, I digress. I'm rambling. All About Evil. Do check it out. It's a fantastic movie. You won't be disappointed, especially if you're a horror film fan. All right, so anyways, guys, that's going to do it for day 3 here on the 31 Days of Horror Volume 7. Hope you guys are enjoying your time in October. Best time of the year. And as usual,